migration. Here we are in the 40th gate. So the cross of migration, 5-1 profile. Here we go. Basically, we are designed to take planning and take it everywhere. The moment that we have a city of Ur, the moment that Mesopotamia established the first viable village city, it spread like wildfire. And of course, wildfire gives the frequency of its time. And after all, I used to remind my history students many years ago when I taught kids that if you could see Rome in its year zero, you would see a modern city. It didn't have electricity, but you would see a modern city, a modern construct of a city with a modern city's population, with slums and ethnic neighborhoods and shops and public transportation and all of those things. We are the nastiest creature that has come out of the soup on this planet. There's nothing meaner and nastier than the killer monkey. Nothing. The killer monkey never asked if I go to the next valley, will anything in the next valley mine? No, it's I'm going to the next valley. And if there's anything that I don't like, I'm going to kill it. In recent years, I often refer to the Matrix films. There's this wonderful scene in the first Matrix movie where the computer program that is an agent is trying to explain to a human how disgusting they are. And using this analogy, how difficult it was to think about them as an animal until finally they figured out what they were, that they were a virus where they go. Life is destroyed. Whatever they touch, they leave behind such a mess. So much death is amazing. Migration. Think about that. That's what we're here for. It's not enough that we can relax in our village. We actually want to go to a point where we can relax on the planet as a whole. It wouldn't take a chicken very long to acknowledge that we're the biggest, meanest, maddest, crudest, most vicious, rapacious, nastiest bastards that ever lived. I grew up in the province of Quebec, where the tradition of the Mohawk Indians was to take priests from France and to boil them alive. Just boil them alive. And people think, how nasty? Well, that's us. It's still us. The whole thing about the cross of planning is that the cross of planning has prevented us from being ugly, and we can really be in many ways. It didn't stop us from institutionalizing ugliness. After all, if you're going to control villages, and when you're going to get into that trip, you're also going to get into the destruction trip. My community is better than your community. And the whole thing about this is that and the whole thing to understand about humanity is that the only reason that we're not in one of these terms of our consciousness, of our comfort with each other, is because of migration. The moment you move to a different valley, you're automatically the next enemy. And you can see that in many of the cross of the Nile in this movement, that it's not enough to go to the suburb and then retreat back to the inner core, that you have to segregate yourself entirely and move to the next valley. Think about the way in which formal religions are broken down by sects. The United States, as an example, was literally settled by religious fanatics who belonged to various cults. They were just cults. It was next valley business, and next valley business became the enemy. It's been like that ever since. But in the same way that the next valley allowed us to conquer the planet, it also places us in competition with the one thing that could place us in competition. Us. Oh, the 4037 is a bitch. The tribe fights, the tribe kills, the tribe initializes death. The tribe does all that. It's vicious to protect the bloodlines, protect the gene pool. So you get to the left angle cross of migration and you get to rigidity, the recognition that to achieve liberation, all negative forces must be rejected. The fifth line here is the sixth line, decapitation. There's a nasty line, it's nasty. The revolutionary that demands absolute victory. The power of the ego is maintained in the rejection of negative relationship. It can't stand these people anymore. It can't live with these people anymore. Come with me. We will start a new world, a new village, a new life. Follow me to the next valleys. Call me Abraham. Call me Moses. Call me Muhammad. Call me anything. Let's go to the next valley, and then we have an enemy to compete with. And when humans have an enemy to compete with, they go from stones to atomic bombs overnight. Isn't that amazing? It's the only thing that was ever our enemy we bear. We wouldn't have had the two Philip News. It never would have been on the list. But where the enemy and migration creates it, I think it's a global cycle. You have migration before you have planning, because we're going through the procession of the equinox. And so you can see what lead up to this time of planning. After all, what did planning do? Planning legitimized what in fact were conquered areas throughout the world. States were legitimized. Think about Europe. It's very easy for people to think that there is this French tribe and there's this German tribe, but it's not so simple. And there have been waves that came across. The first being that came across, we ended up calling them Celts when they finally got to the end. You got into the heart of Bavaria and you have Celtic names attached to everything. The rivers of the village, Old Celtic Ing and ENG, and you see this everywhere in the part of the world. Old Celtic Isar, the river of Munich, an old Celtic name. And there were all kinds of movements that came across, migrations one after the other, streams of them. And the modern nations that we have were all developed in the cycle before planning. Where do you think the Catalans came from? They come from Visigoths. They were there, and Romans that were there. And then all of a sudden it gets concretized as a language and a state because it's more relaxing that way. The city state really functions. The nation state is too bad. So everything that comes to drive us is going to be here, particularly in the heretical fifth line. Follow me to the next valley. And every heretic does it. I tell you, follow me to awakeness. It's such a trip. And the only reason that you move out of your valley is that you're paranoid and you're tired of them always projecting on you. I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to make these people think about me. Let me get out of here. They always want things for me that I don't want to give to them. I'm going to make my own village. I'm going to have my own rules. To this incredible thing about the absence of the cross of planning cycle was that it was almost one utopian writing first began. We're going to have Erewhon, nowhere spelled backwards. We're going to have this ideal place. Now we're going to have this, and everything's going to work perfectly, and everything's going to be offspring and organizing. The 5-2. The 5-2 says, I don't want to live in these valleys. I'm going away, and I'm not telling you where I'm going, period. And they go. No problem. This is the runaway syndrome. This is not the organized heretical call that says, come with me, follow me, I'm going to take you to the promised land. No, 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 no. This is simply the runaway. And obviously, it's going to be a combination of many things. You have a little freak child that grows up in a very tribal environment and have this kind of configuration. They're going to run like hell. They're going to run from the very thing that defines them. The constraint is like what children begin to hate the moment they become teenagers is that there's always somebody telling them what to do. And after a while, they just can't stand it. And there's beings that have very, very uncomfortable penta configurations, so they don't really get caught up and they run away. They normally run away alone, but they normally run to something, whatever it is. In this day and age, there are many, many possibilities. So are you a runaway? Just be a runaway if you are. And this cross migration 5-2